All right, Brand, we are back with the video portion of this interview with D'Lo Brown. And D'Lo, now they're going to see the beautiful, gorgeous face that I've been looking at for the last half hour. Let's show D'Lo Brown, shall we?
There's a smile. Got
Now,
me.
D'Lo, you know what I love? I gotta tell you this. This is what I love about. I love a lot of things about D'Lo Brown. This is what I love most about D'Lo Brown. I love letting the audience know things about the stars that they may not know about. The only reason I know about them is because I worked for you. Now, we'd notice if that camera shot was pulled out a little bit, we would notice that D'Lo Brown is wearing his Chicago Bears shirt.
Yes.
D'Lo, my greatest memories of you, which I love more than anything, is we'd be at a TV taping. It could be the WWE. It could be TNA. It didn't matter, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When we had to find D'Lo, or when I had to find D'Lo to do a pre-tape or to see what he was doing in his match, whatever the case would be, and I wouldn't be able to find D'Lo anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
D'Lo, where were the two places I'd find you, and what would you be doing?
Either playing video games or watching a Bears football game.
You would have just won the $1 million question right there. Bro, you used to find the places to hide, to watch the Bear game, and nothing else mattered. Bro, it could have been WrestleMania. Nothing was more important than the Bears. And quite frankly, I always respected you for that.
Well, I love the Bears. I've loved them since I was 9 years old, and they're the only football team I've ever loved, and I just have this connection to them. And when it was a Sunday somewhere and there's a game on, I had to work, I was going to find, time to scoot off and watch and find my Bears game. And matter of fact, we're taping this on Sunday, and I'm out on the West Coast, and they play in 2 hours. And if we're not done by 2 hours, I'm hanging up on you.
Yeah, but D'Lo, from what I understand now, football's not my number one sport. I'm a baseball guy, but I follow football. But what I understand tonight, D'Lo, is that the Bears are limping into this game.
Bro, we're not limping. We're crawling. But love my team in good and bad, and I'll be there to support them. And, as a matter of fact, last year I was at the Eagle game where they played in Philadelphia and got killed, 54-7. And I refused to leave because I didn't want anybody to see me running with my tail between my legs. So I'll be down there watching my team.
You must have been going crazy during that Super Bowl year because, D'Lo, I got to tell you, I'm a New York Giants fan. The Giants have had their share of Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, D'Lo, I can tell you this. Going back to that Bear Super Bowl team, I think that by far is the best team I ever saw in all my years of watching the NFL.
The 85 Bears defense, without a doubt, you could line up against any offense of any generation, and they would compete in a way that no other team could. I mean, when think about the guys on that team, you got Hall of Famers, you got guys who have become head coaches. There's 4 head coaches off that team: Rivera, Singletary, Fisher. You got guys who were just awesome in what they did. You have Hall of Famers everywhere. You have Pro Bowlers. No team will be put together like that again.
D'Lo, you know what I always remember? And we're going to talk about the Bears for a little bit because I know you love the Bears, and that's fine with me. Bro, you know what I always remember about that Bear team? Bro, do you remember when they used to show highlights and even the game live? Remember when they used to zoom into Singletary's eyes, bro?
His eyes. And the greatest image I ever have of Singletary, it's cold as the Dickens in Chicago, but there's this one lasting image I have where they zoom in on Singletary and there's icicles in his mustache from all the sweat and snot. Right? And his eyes are as big as saucers, and you can see him looking over defense. And I swear I was scared on TV. I felt for the guys he's about to hit.
D'Lo, do you know our connection here? And this is the truth. This is an absolute shoot. I grew up a New York Giants fan. My father was a Giants fan. I'm talking about going all the way back to Fran Tarkenton. That's when I started following the Giants. But D'Lo, do you know who I idolized as a kid? No joke, bro.
Who?
Hold on for a second.
Dick Butkus.
Bro, he was my idol when I was a kid. Bro, I don't know if to this day, and keep in mind, I watched Lawrence Taylor for many, many years. Bro, I don't know if there anybody who played the game like Dick Butkus.
No, he played with reckless abandon. He played, and he played before me. But if you're a fan of your team, you need to know the history of your team. And to watch him play, that man would play with a broken nose and still hit you. I heard stories of him biting people's fingers through his face mask. When you were on the field, he was going to hurt you. And
D'Lo, do you know as a shoot, when I was a kid, my first dog was named Butkus.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. No, that guy played with. The Bears been very lucky with key positions like middle linebacker and running back. We've had some iconic people playing that position, but Butkus sits there among the best that ever played.
D'Lo, when I know somebody's a really a fanatical fan, and every conversation I've had with you about the Chicago Bears, you know how I know when the people have crossed the line? Like when you start talking about the Bears and you use we. Like you're in the locker room with them. You were on the field with them. You suffered the loss with them. It was always we. And I always used to get the biggest kick out of that.
Well, you're the same with the Giants. I've heard you, bro. You're like, when the Giants won the World Series a couple years ago, you're like, we won it. I can't believe we won it. So, I mean, when you're passionate, we live vicariously through them. And when you're passionate, you become part of that team and you live and die with them and you feel their pain and their happiness. And to me, that's the best way to enjoy being a fan of a sports team or wrestling, when you can associate with what you're watching and live and breathe with it.
Hey, D'Lo, I got to ask you this again, and I know I'm elongating it with the Bears, but I know you don't mind talking about the Bears. But I'm bringing up this question because obviously I've been living in Colorado now for the last 8 years, bro. What are your thoughts on Cutler?
And I said this last week. I've crossed the line with Cutler because here's a guy with so much talent. He's got one of the strongest arms in the business. But yet he keeps making these bonehead plays. He keeps throwing. Who throws interceptions to nose tackles? And
has he overstayed his welcome in Chicago?
And that's hard to say because we've never ever had a great quarterback. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like we've got a great quarterback for the first time, but he's an idiot.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's like you don't want to give it up because he's got this great arm that you've never seen in Chicago. Yeah. I mean, think about it. He's about to break Sammy Ball's records. Sammy Ball's been our leading passer for 55 years. Think about that.
But you also know, I mean, I think it's safe to say, D'Lo, that if he doesn't deliver this year, he's going to be done. I mean, we're talking about Chicago here. We're not talking about Jacksonville or Tampa. We're talking about the city of Chicago here. If he doesn't deliver this year, I got to believe he's done.
And I totally agree because every year he's been there, it's always been some problem. The offensive line wasn't good. We didn't have great receivers. The defense didn't give me enough. Well, this year, he's got great receivers. He's got a great offensive line. He's got a great tight end. He's got a heck of a running back. Now, the defense is suspect, but Cutler never lined up on defense. So he's got all the weapons around him. If he can't produce this year, it's the only excuse left. It's him, and it's not anybody else.
Yeah. Okay. Now, D'Lo, let's get back to the illustrious career.
Okay,
I'm going to quiz you here. I think you're going to know. I think you're going to know the answer to this because, D'Lo, you're one of the astute wrestlers, and you and I know, bro. There's astute wrestlers, and then you got the wrestlers that aren't cooking with all four burners. I put you on the astute side.
Okay.
D'Lo, do you remember your very first televised match took place on Shotgun Saturday Night? The reason why I'm pointing this out, bro, is this was before the Attitude Era. So this kind of sets the stage for where the WWE was at the time. D'Lo, I'll tell you it was a 6-man tag. Do you know what the teams were?
My goodness. Well, I would assume it was the Nation versus... let's say like the Headbangers and somebody.
D'Lo.
Uh-oh.
You're going to love this match. I looked at this match saying I popped huge. Now, D'Lo, you had a good team. I'm looking at this, and there's no doubt in my mind you got to be the favorites going into this team.
Okay.
You're teaming with Savio Vega, who everybody loves. We all love Savio, right?
Uh-huh.
Then, D'Lo, you're also teaming with, I'm sorry to say, but, Crush, the late Crush, who was a giant of a man.
Yes. That was the first one of the early incarnations of the Nation. So yes.
Now, do you remember who you faced?
No.
Bro, this is where I
they all blend together.
Okay. Well, on the other side, we had Aldo Montoya.
Oh, geez.
Okay. Wait a minute, bro. Steve Corino, who, Steve Corino has had a phenomenal career, but,
Absolutely.
he's not known as a WWE guy.
No.
Now, this last guy, bro, this was probably the guy, and I'm not talking about the wrestler here. I want to make that clear. I'm talking about the gimmick. Let's take this gimmick, not the guy in the gimmick.
Okay.
But I would guess that night, D'Lo, that you had your hands full with Freddie Joe Floyd.
Oh, geez. and the fact that I know Freddie Joe Floyd or Tracy Smothers going way back to Smoky Mountain.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a handful. Yes. Wow, what a team.
Yeah, I didn't want to, I'm not taking anything away from Tracy, but when I saw that, I was like, that says something about pre-Attitude Era.
And that's the ironic part about that. As I put it together, my first match in Smoky Mountain was a single match against Tracy Smothers. So my first TV match in WWE was a single match that involved Tracy Smothers.
Now, D'Lo, obviously your first claim to fame is the Nation of Domination, but let's face it, D'Lo, you're put in there as a D'Lo, I don't even know if you were a role player at the time. I mean, you were a guy that appeared in a suit, no spotlight put on you, whatsoever, kind of nameless, faceless as part of the Nation of Domination. At the time, that was being run by, the great, and bro, I know you love this guy and respect him more than I do, and I can't say enough of this guy, but, Ron Simmons. So the first question I want to ask you, D'Lo, is, twofold. At that point in your career, number one, what was it like, working under a Ron Simmons and being able to be around Ron, the first ever, black champion at WCW? What was it like working with Ron? What did you learn the most from Ron? And also, D'Lo, as a shoot, I'd like to know, what did you guys in the locker room, the group, what did you honestly think of this gimmick?
Okay, well, if Smoky Mountain was me going away to college, being part of the Nation and being under the tutelage of Ron Simmons was like getting my PhD, was like getting my master's. Back in the day, young guys would ride with the older vets, and my job was to pick Ron up, get the beer, and drive the car. But in that, he would tell me stories. He would teach me things. He would go over my match. He would critique the things I did. And he would give me just insight on how better to improve. And that was invaluable. Ron taught me how to be a professional. One of the things he told me was, just because you get paid doesn't make you a pro. He said, whores get paid. You want to act like a pro and be respected like a pro, and that makes you a professional. And that's probably the biggest lesson I take from him. But he would teach me everything I need to know. He would critique everything. And for us, the Nation gimmick we loved because it was a way of just expressing anything and everything just to get on people's skin. None of us are racist. None of us are anti-white. In fact, my fiance and wife at the time was white. But it allowed us to just express in any way we could, just enough to get what we call heat. Just get under people's skin and get people pissed off at us. And we loved it. And it was every week we turn up the TV and going, okay, what are we going to do this week? What are we going to do this week? Who are we going to hate on this week? And it was fun. It was absolutely fun.
You know what the amazing thing to me is, bro? And I think you'll appreciate this, D'Lo, because we worked together, it wasn't that long ago, bro. We worked together at TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Man, bro, when you talk about like a Ron Simmons telling you, being paid doesn't mean you're a professional. And Ron Simmons telling you, bro, how to carry yourself and how to act. And man, D'Lo, then you fast forward. I mean, we're talking now probably, 97.
Mm-hmm.
Now you fast forward, 15 years later, and D'Lo, the guys we worked with in TNA, they're younger guys. I used to call them, D'Lo, Generation Me, who were
Yeah.
just so entitled and who thought they were over and who thought they were stars. And, tomorrow they wanted to be in the main event. And man, it's just a shame that, that's what's missing today, bro. The car rides with Ron Simmons and the
Mm-hmm.
freaking education that man gave you, that's just a dying art in the wrestling business today. And I think that's what a lot of these younger talents are missing.
No, without a doubt. I mean, that element is now gone from business because there's, for lack of it, there's no territory. So there is no long 200-mile drives anymore unless you're with the WWE. So you don't have that opportunity to sit in a car and listen and get tutelage from Ron or Godfather and hear their stories of how they came up. And that's part of the respect business because you're now getting the education that they got. You think, here's my place in the business history. Rewind 15 years and they're sitting in my spot and I could be them if I work hard enough. And that part is gone now. And that's that part, that passion, that respect, that appreciation of business is now gone. And I'm not saying anything negative to the talent today. They're incredible. Some of the things they do are great, but there's an element that's missing. And you can see it on TV. You can feel it when they talk about the business. They don't talk about it as something they love it. They talk about it as something they do.
D'Lo, I say this all the time, bro. And D'Lo, I got to be honest with you. Like I suffered I suffered a bad concussion at WCW. I had I had post-concussion syndrome. I got hit in the head a couple of more times while I had my concussion. And D'Lo, I'm being honest with you when I tell you, 23 years later, I know I'm not as sharp as I used to be. And there's a lot of things, I forgot because of, just having that head trauma. So like, I don't remember everything, but I got to tell you, I tell this story all the time, D'Lo. I had one single car ride for maybe 2 hours with a man by the name of Arn Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
I never forgot that car ride. I can only imagine, D'Lo, what it was like spending time in that car with Ron Simmons.
Yeah, take that 2 hour car ride and multiply it by 100. And we had that every night. Back then the schedule was you could work 40 straight days. And, you would just ride and ride and ride. And the time I had sitting in a lobby or sitting in a hotel room or sitting in that car, it's invaluable. It was invaluable. And it sculpted who I would become. And I still use it. Like I said, I still use those lessons today. I'm still respectful and nice and kind. I don't care what it is. I don't care if I'm walking in a supermarket. You just never know. You always just be respectful. And that's the lessons I got from Ron. Be better than what you think you can be. Be better than who you are, and good things happen.
Now, D'Lo, I want to go over this with you because I really want to pick your brain here because, bro, this right here really says a lot about D'Lo Brown, and I want to really lay this out for everybody because, again, bro, I go back to today's product, and hey, D'Lo, I see a lot of guys on WWE that I think are phenomenal. Like I love the roster. I mean, I love the talent roster. When I'm critical, bro, I'm critical from what I did for a living. I'm critical about the creative side of it. And I'm critical, bro, mostly because the show is 3 hours long. And that's a huge issue for them. But as far as the talent, I put the talent over to the moon. I love the talent. But bro, listen to this. In 1997, And this speaks volumes for you. And I want to get your thoughts on this, D'Lo. There was a restructuring, of the Nation of Domination in 1997. Now, this is who was in the group in 1997. Now, keep in mind, this is pre-Rocky. This is pre The Rock. This is pre-Dwayne Johnson. Listen to the individuals in this freaking group. You had, of course, Ron Simmons. Then you had Ahmed Johnson. We all know what Ahmed Johnson looked like, and maybe the strongest man in the history of the business, but you can't even say that because then you had Mark Henry in the group. On top of Mark Henry, bro, you had the Godfather, who was Kama at the time.
Yeah.
Bro, you look at that group on freaking paper, bro, from 1997 to 2014, I don't know if there is any group that could have come close to that ensemble, which to me, when that went through my mind again today and brought me back, I was like, oh, these guys will kill anybody. But D'Lo, this is the question I have to ask you, bro. With guys like Farouk, and Ahmed and Kama and Mark Henry, how did you rise above all those guys to become a star in your own right? Bro, the odds of D'Lo Brown making a name for himself in a group with talent like this, it had to be 1,000 to 1.
Yeah, it was long odds, but once again, this is something Ron Simmons told me. He always told me, when you get the chance for the spotlight, make sure it shines on you. Steal every scene you're in. You're not trying to offend anybody. You're not trying to upstage anybody. You're trying to be noticed. So I made it a point, whenever I was given anything, whether it was standing with a bow tie on, I was going to do it better than anybody else. If I was going to take that big bump, I was going to do it better than anybody else, because I was going to have someone notice me and my talent. And I got lucky enough that it happened. And fortunately, I had people in the right places who saw it and wanted to capitalize and utilize it.
Hey, D'Lo, I want to ask you this, too, because you were in the group, and it's funny now, because I look at those names, and outside of Ron, bro, Ron was already a legend at the time. Ron was on a different planet by himself. But, bro, at that time, you had three guys, Ahmed, the Godfather, and Mark Henry, who were, bro, like pretty much in the same place in the business. They were both all fairly new with the WWE. Bro, they all had a lot of the same tools. You're talking about impressive looking guys, guys that were, strong as bulls, unbelievable freaking bodies. I mean, I don't know who was stronger than who, but I got to ask you this, D'Lo, at that time, the way this thing was set up, was there ever any competition in the group at the time? And the only reason I'm asking you that is not to stir anything up, but I would have to think there had to be some kind of competition within the group.
Well, we were all naturally competitive, and we all wanted to rise up and do something better. And so, yeah, it was a friendly rivalry, not like where we cutthroat each other or anything like, because that's what made the Nation kind of cool, is we always wanted to help each other rise and be better. But, yeah, it was a natural, friendly competition, and that's why I started doing things that I knew, they couldn't do. Like, that's why I started doing frog splash and going to the top rope and trying to make my stuff stand out a little bit, and doing moonsaults that a guy my size shouldn't do, which – that was my way of getting noticed, is doing things that a guy my size didn't do before, but yeah, it was a natural rivalry there.
Well, also, D'Lo, having been there and having, worked on the inside, bro, it was always like everybody knew. And I don't think a fan, unless you're an educated fan, would understand this and look at it this way. But, bro, let's face it. Those guys were big guys. And, because they were so big, there was really a limitation to their game. And, bro, a lot of them, Ahmed, Godfather and Mark Henry, a lot of them had the same tools. And a lot of them, their talent was based on their power. Bro, you were the worker in the group. And that's why you were there. And when you were were booked with them. You were booked with them for that reason. But bro, I gotta add, much to your credit, D'Lo, that's a great spot to be in, but it's also a lot of pressure.
You know what though? But I thrived in the pressure, and I know I was put in those spots because I was put there to get good matches out of people, or D'Lo can get the finish right, or D'Lo can get a good match out of anybody. But I took that as a badge of honor. I mean, that was my world championship. That was my shield. That's what I used to propel myself. So I never minded that at all. And it's ironic because I always admired the quote unquote workhorses of wrestling, like the Arn Andersons or the Tully Blanchards. So to have that same moniker put on me, that was pretty cool. I didn't mind it one bit.
D'Lo, I have to ask you, when Dwayne Johnson comes into the group, bro, and a lot of people forget, the Rock, his debut when he was Rocky Maivia at Madison Square Garden Survivor Series, people booed him out of building. A lot of people don't remember that, bro. I remember. It was Bruce Pritchard who came to me, and it was Bruce's idea to put Rock in the Nation of Domination. I didn't see it. And I said, bro, I don't see this. Now, once he was in there and I saw it develop, I was like, holy crap. Mm-hmm. Now, D'Lo, the rise of The Rock and being in that group, did you see and did you know that this was going to be something really special?
You could feel it, and I think being in the Nation gave Rock a place of protection because he had failed as Rocky Maivia with the dye Rocky dye and the poofy hair, but being in the Nation and not having all the pressure of the world on him gave him the ability to experiment, to be free, and that's when he started with his different interview styles and his little one-liners and just little things that he would practice and get better, and his mannerisms and the people's eyebrow and the people's elbow. And you could see it, you could feel it. You could feel it when he walked through the crowd. You could feel the difference, and you could watch it grow. And it was really cool to be part of that and to be next to it as it was growing. And then I would learn lessons from him, and that's what I would take onto my style. And okay, this is how you get noticed. This is what you do. This is how you connect to people. So it was cool to be right there, having a front row seat, watching The Rock rise up.
D'Lo, let me ask you this too, because obviously being a part of that group, you were a lot closer to him, in that locker room together, traveling together and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Here's the one thing I admire the most about The Rock, and I tell everybody this, but I'm curious to hear your viewpoint from somebody being on the inside and him actually being on the group. Mm-hmm. One thing I say about The Rock, bro, is the years that I work with them, and, again, I was there at the Survivor Series. I was there at the opening start of, when he was in the Nation, and I saw the rise, bro. Mm-hmm. To me, the thing I respected the most about him was no matter how hotter and hotter and hotter and how big a star he was becoming. And by the time I left in 99, he was huge, bro. He was a movie star without being a movie star at the time. But the one thing I always say about the guy, bro, is he never changed who he was. I could have had a conversation with Rocky Maivia at Survivor Series at the Garden. I would have had the same exact conversation with him in 1999 on my way out the door. The guy never got an ego. And bro, we're in a business of egos. Mm-hmm. I thought that was absolutely unbelievable. The guy never changed. How was it working with him as a talent?
The exact same way. The guy in 97 that came into the Nation and we would go to the Waffle House after a show would be the same guy in 99 when he's headlining WrestleMania. He's doing the main event at WrestleMania, and we could go to the Waffle House after the show. He and I could sit and talk about anything, anytime, and he never changed. He was always there for advice. He'd come up and go, "Hey, D'Lo, man, why don't you try this or try something like this?" So he was always cool with me. With everyone he was cool with before, he was cool with after he became somebody special. So that I give him a lot of credit for, and I assume to the day he's the same kind of guy.
Yeah, Bully Ray, still keeps in touch with him, and I
Hmm.
talk to Bully, here and there. Hey, bro, he says the same exact thing. He says he'll pick up the phone, he'll call Rock will answer. It's like they were back in the WWE in 2000. Nothing has changed about the guy, and I believe that wholeheartedly. But I want to talk about you, D'Lo. I
Okay.
want I want to ask you this question. Now, D'Lo, I've worked in my career with hundreds of tag teams, people that worked very closely with each other and depended on each other to make a living. And,
Hmm.
D'Lo, there were some tag teams I worked with that had a phenomenal chemistry. There was some that I worked with where they were individuals and it was not so much, and it was business.
Hmm.
I think I can say this and mean this wholeheartedly, D'Lo. I don't know if I ever worked with two individuals in any company I ever worked for. Any company, bro, that had the chemistry of you and Mark Henry. And from my point of view, D'Lo, I'm going to tell you, I saw that chemistry from day one. It's not anything that had to be developed. It's not anything that had to be worked on. You were the straight guy. Mark Henry was unbelievable, hysterical. Didn't even know it, bro. Didn't have a clue how funny the guy was. Bro, I never saw a chemistry like that in my history in the business, one that you guys didn't even have to work at. Can you explain that bond between you and Mark Henry?
It's simple. It's very simple. We were friends outside of the ring. And the two guys you saw in the ring playing with each other, having fun, were just an extension of who we were riding down the road on the highways together, in the rental car, at the hotels. Mark Henry and I are friends. I can call Mark Henry to this day. In fact, the WWE was in Vegas about a month ago, and me and I hung out. Mark and I were friends, and it was just an easy way to show that friendship on camera. And it came off as good chemistry, and you could see it. We enjoyed being out there with each other. We were two young guys who were in a great spot in a big company, and we loved it and enjoyed it, and that's why it came off that way.
Now, D'Lo, I gotta ask you this question because you were so close, bro. I always used to say Mark Henry was one of those guys that was so good, and he had no idea how good he was. Bro, was he working me? Did he know how good he was?
At the time, no, but he knows now. At the time he was still trying to find his way, and he was still trying to figure out his place in the company, because Mark didn't take the traditional route to come in, so he kept to he tried to keep a low profile, but he knows now how good he was then.
Hey, D'Lo, I got to tell you this, and I'm saying this as a shoot. And you know what? When I watch Raw now, bro, I still love when I see some of our guys on the show. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't be happier for Dustin Rhodes and the way he turned his life around. And every time I see him on TV, I stand up and applaud. But bro, I have to tell you, and I'm not just saying this because I worked with him and because I know him. Mark Henry, to this day, is cutting some of the best promos on that show.
Mark Henry is doing the best promos. He's doing some of the best work he's had. I mean, he's connecting with people in ways he never did before. Mark is a 10,000 times better performer he is today than he was just 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And the fact that he's still there, still putting the time in after all this time, that's a testament to him.
Well, bro, what's still there? What about the way he looks?
No, I mean, he's not changed a bit. He looks great. And
Unbelievable.
he looks great. He moves around the ring better now than he did 15 years ago.
Bro, I swear, I was blown away the other day, Deal. And again, I hate to keep talking about these other people, but you work with some people I really love. Bro, I remember, look, let's call a spade a spade. Deal, these guys come out, Mark Henry's been with the WWE for 20 years.
Yes.
These guys come out, they're past their prime, you see the stomach a little, this, that, and the other thing. Bro, he came out the other day, and I'm looking at him, and bro, he still has that V thing going on. And I'm like, bro, the guy, hey, D'Lo, he's got to be 43, no?
Yeah, 43, 44. And the only difference between Mark Henry now and Mark Henry then is he's bald. That's it. He looks the exact same and moves the exact same.
D'Lo, I got to ask you this because this might be, D'Lo, your greatest honor in wrestling, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, First of all, well, I don't know because there's so many. First of all, being noticed in that group of individuals that I just laid out. To me, the guy in the background, the workhorse, the guy doing all the spots, that's who he's supposed to be. But not D'Lo. All of a sudden now, D'Lo Brown is becoming a star in the WWE. Bro, here's the thing that just blows my mind. And I really want you to comment on this. Bro, in 1998, D'Lo Brown is the European champion.
Yeah.
D'Lo, I don't know, bro. It's the 4th or 5th belt down the line. It's a belt that means absolutely nothing. Looking back now, I can't even remember the history of the belt. I can't even remember why there was a European champion. Bro, I watched today's product. I don't know who's got what belt, and every belt doesn't mean anything except the main one. I'm just going to be honest. There's no importance. Bro, you took this European belt that meant absolutely nothing. And, bro, you got this belt over. And let's go beyond that, bro. A lot of times when people talk about D'Lo Brown and what were the highlights of D'Lo's career, bro, they talk about you and Sean Waltman fighting for the European title. Yeah. D'Lo, that's unbelievable to me.
And that goes back to Ron Simmons saying, grab your spotlight. When I was given a chance to run with the ball, I didn't care what it was going to be. You could have given me the tin can belt. I was going to represent it like it was a world championship. And because I was given the European title, and then I had a great opponent like X-Pac, Sean Waltman, to banter back and forth with, and you put on these great matches, and people are like, why are they competing so hard for this belt? Well, this belt must mean something to them, and it did. We wanted to elevate that up, and I didn't make the belt made me, and in turn, we made the belt, and we made that belt mean something, and my series of matches with X-Pac for it or Val Venus for it, it was friends going out there to prove we belong on the big stage, and the belt came along for the ride. And in matter of fact, if I go in my closet right now, I keep one belt. I have one belt that I have in my collection, and it's my European title.
D'Lo, it's a testament to you. This is what's unbelievable to me. And you know what, bro? I bet you don't even think about this. But these are the things. This is why I enjoy what I'm doing, because these are the things I can point out to fans listening and fans of the business, because I was there and I did that. And these things are very important that they understand. Now, D'Lo, especially back then, okay, when it came to the Intercontinental title. Bro, there was somewhat of a plan. You had to know who the Intercontinental champion was going to be next. And back then, bro, the Intercontinental champion was a huge deal. Not what it is today. It was a huge deal. The Intercontinental champion meant you were next in line to become the world champion. That's what it meant back then. Now, my point is, you had a plan who was going to be the Intercontinental champion. It didn't just happen. D'Lo, the fact that you had the European title and the Intercontinental championship at the same time, does anybody out there think for 1 minute that a creative meeting was held at any time and there was discussion to put the Intercontinental title and the European title on D'Lo Brown at the same time? Does anybody on this planet think that conversation ever took place? No, it did not. What it was with D'Lo was out there delivering every single week. We knew what we were going to get out of D'Lo, so we just went with D'Lo. That's why, D'Lo, sometimes I get pissed off when I hear wrestlers, they didn't get the push, they didn't get the push, they didn't get the push. Bro, you got to make your own push. And when you got a guy like D'Lo out there, and just like Vince McMahon, the first time he saw you with Ahmed, when you got a guy like D'Lo out there and you're noticed noticing D'Lo, and the fans are noticing D'Lo. That's the push. The push doesn't come from writing anything down on a piece of paper. The push comes from a guy that is smacking your head against the wall to notice you, and you can't help but to notice them. And then all of a sudden, the guy's got the European title and the Intercontinental title, and that wasn't in anybody's mind. Bro, that is an absolute testament for who you are and how hard you worked in the business to deserve everything you ever got.
I appreciate that. And by far, that was the greatest achievement I ever had in wrestling. And I knew what it meant. I knew what the position I was in. And you're right. There is no such thing as a push. You can have the office help you out, but if you're not making people notice you, if you're not having the fans react to you, I don't care if the office is making you win every night and put you on the main event. If you don't connect, it's not going to work. And you've got to make people notice you. And that's what I strive to do. That's what I always wanted to do. And it worked out for me. And I have a great spot, a great history in this business. And I found myself in a wonderful place. And I'm so thankful and blessed that I was in that spot and had that opportunity.
And, D'Lo, a couple of things I want to talk about at that time was, first of all, one thing I loved, and bro, let's get it all out in the open here, D'Lo, because I'm going to refresh your memory a little bit, okay? Mm-hmm. I loved the freaking chest protector. Yes. And I'll tell you why I loved the chest protector. I loved the chest protector because I knew D'Lo Brown would know how to get it over. It was a nothing. It was a chest protector. But I knew, through everything you did off the top and the low down and the sky high and the frog splashes and all the crazy stuff you did, I know D'Lo Brown is going to get the chest protector over. Now, at the beginning, you didn't like the chest protector. I had to think, D'Lo, that maybe it was difficult to work with and you weren't able to work as freely. That's what I would have to think. But, what were your early feelings of that gimmick? And at the end of the day, do you think that gimmick helped enhance you?
You're 1,000% correct. In the beginning, I thought it was going to be the worst thing ever because no one had ever done it before. No one, guys have had worn things on their arms or wore gloves, but no one ever wore a full body protection piece. And I thought I was going to be the joke of the world. And the boys in the back of the Caribbean call you Johnny Bench or something like that because you're wearing this catcher's outfit. And I give credit. Jim Ross came up with the idea. He sat down in catering one time and said, he thought about doing the frog splash to finish. He goes, maybe if we hurt you and give you something like, Iron Mike Sharp, maybe that work. And I thought he was joking, so I just let it go. And then 2 days later, I was getting we're thinking about doing this chest protector thing. And I remember going home and talking to my ex-wife at the time. And I give her 1,000% credit because she leveled me out. Because I was like, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'll be stupid looking because, everyone wants to be the big, strong, kick-ass babyface or heel, and you don't need a gimmick. And she said words to me that reverberated and to this day stands. She goes, if you try it and it fails, it failed because not of you trying. But if you say you don't want to do it, then it's your fault for not trying it. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. And I came back and I was like, okay, let's do it. And if I was going to do it, I was going to do it 1,000%. And I was going to make it, once again, I was going to make this thing into my shield of armor. And this was going to be the biggest thing I ever did. And I embraced it. And when you embrace something, you run with it. People can see it. And the chest protector by far was the thing that put me on the map. That, in addition to the DX skit and Road Dogg portrayal of me. Because he came out wearing a chest protector, and maybe I was noticed, but I was still under the radar a bit. And when he came out and over-exaggerated my head shake and the chest protector and the way I spoke, and then 2 segments later, I come out and do a match, and people go, "Oh man, D'Lo really does do that, and he really does shake his head, and he's got a chest protector on, and wait a minute, he's not hurt." That's what got me. I think that really propelled me into the conscience of the wrestling public, and from that point, the rest was pretty easy. Just take off and go.
Bro, if you're still giving Ahmed Johnson 25% of whatever you make for the rest of your life for you being noticed, you freaking owe Road Dogg 50%. You only get 25.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Bro, when you want to talk about, like, hey, listen, D-Lo, let's face it, bro. The Attitude Era was a runaway freaking train. Bro,
Yes.
if I can remember 5 things about the Attitude Era, it was a lot. Bro, him coming out and doing D'Lo Brown with the head and the whole gimmick is something I will never, ever forget for the rest of my life.
I wholeheartedly agree. And people ask me about it all the time. They're like, what'd you think of Road Dogg's portrayal of you? And I said, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my career.
D'Lo, you know what the thing was about that skit that was so funny, bro? First of all, the guys were nervous as heck to do it, right? So, like me and Ferrara wrote it, and bro, I swear to God, this was our mindset going in, right? And they were scared to death. The mindset was, this is going to be really, really bad, or this is going to be something that people will never forget. And bro, the way those guys went out there and did that, has nothing to do with what me and Ed wrote. It had nothing to do with the words. That had nothing to do with it. Every one of their single performances, that made that a memory for me that I will never in my life forget.
It was gold. I remember sitting in the back watching it, and when they came back, all I could do was just clap my hands like this because it was one of the greatest performances I had ever seen. And my fear was the nation was going to have to rebut and do their own skit. And I was like, we can never live up to that. So hopefully we never have to do it. That's how good of a skit it was. And I will always remember that.
Yeah, unbelievable. Now, D'Lo, I wanna turn for a minute, and we need to talk about this because I wasn't. I know I wasn't there for this. This happened after I left the WWE, but I want to talk to you a little bit about this. We all know the situation with Droz. We all understand. And D'Lo, I got to say this up front. And this really has nothing to do with Droz because this is something I've been saying for my entire career. Okay. And you don't have to comment on this part of it because I know you can't. I'm going to comment on it. Okay. When I was in a position of, in management, let's just say at TNA, and bro, I used to know what guys would come in for and what some of the guys would get per match. And I used to go out of my mind, insane, nuts, crazy, because I used to basically say, you're going to pay so-and-so $200 or $300 when every time any one of those athletes step into the ring, it can be their last match. It's that simple. As somebody that took bumps, as somebody that suffers from a concussion that happened in 1999 because I didn't take a Russian leg sweep the right way, I understand how freaking delicate it is every single match, every single move, every single maneuver. When TNA used to pay guys $250, $300 for a match, I used to go out of my mind because I used to say, do you understand this could be their last match? Do you understand the mentality of these guys is every time they're out there, it's balls to the wall. They don't care what they're getting paid because they're professionals and they want to put on a show. You can't pay them that kind of money. I used to go out of my mind. Bro, I used to get pissed off at the talent for accepting that kind of money. Now, I know people have to work, but you've got to put yourself in a higher standard and understand what you're doing is dangerous. There's no doubt about it. People want to talk about fake wrestling, this and that. Unless you're there, unless you know what you guys do, it's one miscalculation. That's it. And like I've always known that, and it's going to happen. There's no getting around it. I saw it happen many times. There's no getting around that. Now, D'Lo, we know the situation, with Droz, and I'm not going to walk through that, Matt. Bro, things happen. I know that. I mean, D'Lo, what have you delivered and taken 50,000 moves in your life? I mean, the chances of one of them going awry, gonna happen, bro. I mean, that's the way it is. What I want to talk to you about, D'Lo, is how did you get through that period of time? D'Lo, I'm asking you this question because on a whole different level, okay? I wrote the show, the pay-per-view with Owen. I've told the story a million times of, how that spot came about. And, it wasn't originally written in the show. We had no intention to repel Owen that night until I got a phone call days before from Steve Taylor, who said to me, Vince, the guys at WCW are going to be here. They want to show us what they can do for the company. The guys that repel Sting, is there anything we can do in the show? I looked at the format and I saw Owen was the Blue Blazer. Without thinking twice about it, bro, I thought, yeah, this will help get Owen over. That was my thought. Yeah, this will help get Owen over. It was never written in the show. It was never needed for the show. We all know what happened. At the end of the day, bro, no matter what, okay, I wrote that on the paper. I wrote the format. It was me that typed out that show. And, D'Lo, I've played the moment over a million times in my mind. And, how many years it is later, I still can't get by it. The only thing that gets me by it, D'Lo, is the way the series of events happened. I am a firm believer of everything happens for a reason, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. Again, I'm not going to preach here, but you know how I am, bro. Everything's in God's hands. I firmly believe that. And no matter how much we beat ourselves up for everything, stuff happens for a reason. So I'm asking you, D'Lo, because I dealt with something very similar. And it's to this day, it is difficult for me. How did you deal with that incident at the time, and how were you able to, cope with it and move on? Because I can only imagine what you were going through.
It wasn't easy, and in fact, after it happened, it was in Nassau Coliseum in New York. It happened, and like my whole world just fell apart. And I never ever, you never want to hurt any. You're not in this to hurt anybody. You're in there, you don't want to take food off someone else's table. You're in there to help them make work and do their job and do it well. And when it happened, it gutted me. I remember going home, and I didn't want to wrestle anymore. I was done. A lot of people didn't know I pretty much retired at that point. I told my ex-wife at the time, I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. And, I was given the next week off from TV and just time to relax. And then I was given, I got a phone call from Jim Ross. And we all know that Jim Ross is, big into football, Oklahoma. And he gave me the football speech. He gave me the fact that, we all know what we're doing. We all know what we're getting into. Accidents happen. And he said, let's not have two careers end over this. And with support from the company, from my ex-wife, and just a long sit down, I finally started getting past it. I mean, I've never, till this day, I'm not over it. I mean, it still haunts me to this day. And I've never used the running powerbomb ever again since that night. Just I won't do it. I can do it, but I won't do it. It just I don't wish that on anyone, to be either part of it or, in any way. It's a hard thing to carry, and I actually changed as a performer from that, because I didn't. For a long time, I suffered with lack of confidence in the ring. No one would know that, no one would see it, but for a long time I was scared. Oh my God, is this going to be the move that's going to hurt somebody again? And that ate me up, and it took me years to get to the point where I didn't think about that anymore when I went and did matches or called a spot. It's even to this day, it's still a difficult thing. When I can think back, and I can see every split second of what happened, and it still bothers me to this day. And I
got to tell you though, D'Lo, though, thank God, bro, for people, because I had the similar circumstance with Owen. Like what Jim Ross said to you right there, that's incredible to me. We don't want to lose 2 careers over this. I mean, how did he even find those words? I mean, that is an unbelievable statement. It was much like with me, bro. I'll never forget this as long as I live. The day after the Owen incident. Now, bro, you got to understand, Steve Austin was a very strong head guy. At the time, he would, sometimes he would be a little bit paranoid because he received fame so fast and he didn't want to lose it. And he was always protecting it, and rightfully so. I understood him. But as head writer, every week you're giving Austin his material, sometimes you would butt heads. Mm-hmm. Also, bro, Steve didn't have the best relationship with Owen. Owen once, did a move to Steve in the ring, and it gave Steve a stunner, and he scared the hell out of Steve, and it really affected him for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, him and Owen had a little bit of a, relationship, right? The next day after Owen passed away, bro, I was like you, D'Lo, I was on the phone with my wife that night crying. I wanted to be done with the wrestling business. I'm done. I didn't want to have anything to do with it the other day anymore. I had to go to TV the next day because we were a family. I had to be with these guys, right? Mm-hmm. And bro, of all the people that came up to me and basically said, Vince, it wasn't your fault. It was Steve Austin. And it's moments like that, bro, that you just never forget. And, again, it's like, thank God, bro, you've got people like that in your lives that are smart enough to sit back and know you and mm-hmm. know how you are and know what you're going through and be able to pass along the words to you that Jim Ross, did to you. Just, what an incredible thing to say to you at that moment in time.
Yeah, I'm very thankful to the people that have been around me, and he knew exactly what to say at the right moment to get my head back to where it needed to go in the right direction. And for that, I'm eternally grateful, because, like I said, just like you, I was out the door. I was done. I was going to tear my contract up, and I was going to go do whatever. I didn't care anymore. And yeah, it's wonderful to have great people around you who can help motivate you and get you back on track when you need it the most.
Yeah. Okay, D'Lo, I want to talk to you about something now too. We're kind of getting to the end of your WWE career, and I want to ask you something about this. Now, mm-hmm. D'Lo, when I left the WWE, me and Ed left in October '99. I mm-hmm. remember it caught Vince by surprise. I remember saying to Vince, my last words to him were, Vince, you have nothing to worry about. You have at least a year to ride the wave. That's how hot we were at the time. No matter what you did, you were going to ride the wave for another year. It didn't matter. But I also do know, D'Lo, that one thing that Ed and I did was We would make the card for the pay-per-view, and on every single show, we would make sure that every single match was covered on Raw that was going to be on the pay-per-view. It didn't matter if it was the main event. It didn't matter if it was the last match. If you were on the pay-per-view, you were getting television time to get your story over. We did that with every single match, okay? One thing I noticed, the minute Ed and I left, that type of booking or writing seemed to have disappeared. And, get the idea of getting everybody over seemed to not exist anymore. It was getting, the top guys over. What were the top 3 stories? Everybody else was kind of like, oh, by the way, and it's still pretty much to this way today. Now, Dilo, I don't understand the circumstances around it, but you're going to explain it to me. I know when we left the WWE, D'Lo Brown is on top of the world, and D'Lo Brown is an important piece to the puzzle, just like everybody else. Everybody was a piece of the puzzle. Without all those pieces, there wouldn't have been an Attitude Era. It's that simple. D'Lo Brown was an important piece of that puzzle. Now, D'Lo, I know somewhere around 2001, 2002, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was a point where you were actually sent back down to developmental towards the end of your WWE stint. I wasn't there, so I don't know this. I'm going to be finding out for the first time. Basically, what happened once D'Lo was so hot and D'Lo got himself over, and I give you all the credit for the world, bro. I tell everybody all the time, it's not the writing. I can be Shakespeare. If guys can't pull it off, it doesn't matter. That's why Al Pacino makes blockbusters and Al Pacino makes bombs. It's not Al Pacino's fault. It's the talent has to get it over. And everything we gave you, you got over. What happened towards 2001, 2002? I'm just curious because I wasn't there.
Well, after you left, things were okay for a little while. Then like you said, they started only concerned about the top 3 matches, and they started putting less and less importance on that mid-card area where I was. And, you slowly get lost and forgotten. And I was off TV for a while. And then Chaz Mosh and I would beg to do something. So that's when they put us together as Lowdown. And then we were Lowdown as a tag team. And then all of a sudden they put us with Tiger Ali Singh, which to this day is the dark period of my career. But then Tiger Ali Singh got hurt. And then when he got hurt, they were like, well, we got to take you off TV. Well, since we're paying you, we need to send you down to developmental. So go to HWA, go to Louisville. And after spending time there, and then go to Puerto Rico. And people don't know this, I spent like 6 months in Puerto Rico, and that's when then, guys were getting released. And so Chaz got released, and I got brought back.
Wait, let me stop you for a second, because I want to talk about that period of time. Because, D'Lo, to me, this doesn't have anything to do with ego. This has to do with being a human being. You're on top, bro, at the WWE. You have 2 belts. You're on WrestleManias. You're at the pinnacle of your career, bro. Now, for reasons out of your control, because it wasn't a talent issue, you didn't all of a sudden become great. And now D'Lo sucks. Situations out of your control, bro. Now you're in developmental. Now you're in Puerto Rico for 6 months, bro. How does that affect your psyche? And as I said, to me, that's not an ego issue. That's a human being issue. How does that affect you? I know you're a professional, but how does that affect you at that point in your life?
It bothered the hell out of me, because I knew for the fact, why do I need to be in developmental? I didn't think I need to be there at all, because 6 months earlier I have 2 belts, or a year earlier I have 2 belts, and I'm wrestling on WrestleManias, and I wrestled in 30-something straight pay-per-views, and I was in my mind, I was going to be one of those next guys elevated up to that top tier, and I did everything I thought I could to be there, and it just wasn't in the cards. And then slowly but surely get pushed down to developmental, and trust me, that's a real kick in, in the face when you're 1 week main event in Madison Square Garden, the next week you're in, San Juan. And
D'Lo, let me ask you this, bro. I'm asking you because we all handle this differently, D'Lo. How do you not walk away at that point? Like, what's keeping you going?
You don't give up. You don't give up. You try. I mean, the same thing that brought me up the first time. You know what? If you're going to send me down, then I'm going to prove that you were wrong, and I'm going to work my ass off. And I remember that's when I got in the best shape of my life. I was down at 235, and if you're going to keep me here, I'm going to show you reasons why you shouldn't. And just work hard, and that's all I did, is try to come back and show them they made a mistake. But it was never the same after you left, because you took care of everybody on the roster, and you gave everybody the opportunity to get themselves over, and that changed when you left.
Well, I got to tell you this, D'Lo. 2003, 2004, you go to TNA. Mm-hmm. And, bro, I remember, it's funny that you left the story there, and now we pick it up because, bro, I remember the freaking shape you were in. You were in tremendous shape. You immediately came in TNA as a headliner. The thing I remembered, bro, more than anything, is AJ loved you. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were AJ Styles. I mean, he just worship the ground that you worked on. And we did some great stuff, with you and AJ. And again, mm-hmm. I remember, D'Lo, you were in peak physical condition. I mean, phenomenal. D'Lo, what happened? Because now again, I'm going through the history here and I'm seeing, I remember that time in 2003, 2004, but now, I'm looking at 2005 to 2007 and D'Lo Brown is back in Japan. What happened at the end of TNA there?
I had the urge to wrestle in Japan. I felt I could be more creative and have more freedom there. And not that anything was wrong with TNA, just, I loved working with AJ and I loved working with the talent there. I just didn't think I was a fit there. And there was a time when that first run there, they wanted to radically change who I was as a character. And after 12 years of being D'Lo, I didn't think it would be in the best interest of anyone for me to go off and change and become something completely different. So I just opted to go to Japan where I could be D'Lo and be me and headline over there. And that's what I chose to do. And I spent I spent those 5 years there.
Now, D'Lo, let me ask you this, though, bro, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I got my dates correct. When you go to Japan and spend the 5 years there, mm-hmm. Now, D'Lo, you have a baby during that time, right?
Yeah, and I was spending,
exactly. That's my question, bro. Talk to me. How was that?
It's difficult because I was spending 2 weeks in Japan. I'd fly home. I'd be home a week, and I'd spend 2 more weeks in Japan and fly home. And it was back and forth. Every 2 weeks I was in Japan, and it was more difficult than wrestling here in the States. At least in the States, you could, you're wrestling just 3 or 4 days, you could be home. I mean, I basically lived, out of the 5 years I was in Japan, 3 years of it, I lived in Japan. And, just back and forth. And it was extremely difficult. And, that's some of the wedges that came between me and my ex-wife at the time. Just that time apart is killer to any relationship.
Well, D'Lo, your girls right now, though, if I'm correct, your girls right now are about 5 and 10, correct?
6 and 11. Well,
6 and 11. So you still have plenty of time left.
Oh, yes.
Thank God for that. You know what I mean? Because I know what it is to be away from the kids, bro. But thank God that they're still young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and there's tons of time to be daddy's little girls, and definitely they are. Trust me on that.
Now again, D'Lo, now you come back, which was good because you just had the baby. But now 2008, 2009, you go back to the WWE, but it was only for a year. So I guess, did things not change from the time you had left?
There were, when I initially came back, there were conversations that they knew where I was going to go and had an idea what I was going to be. And then after I signed the contract, none of that came to fruition. And, I was on TV, I think 3 times in 9 months, but I did all the house shows. I was on every house show. And never once was it given an opportunity. I was on TV a couple of times. They threw me out there in Chicago just because I was a Chicago guy, and they threw me out in St. Louis. Just I don't know why, but it never really materialized. And I put it as maybe I wasn't a fit for that company anymore. And they did a series of cuts, and the irony of it is on the same weekend, Ron Simmons and I both got released on the same day on the same weekend, and I thought that was extremely ironic.
You know
And that
what's
was that was the last time I
unbelievable,
was there.
D'Lo? Like these people, I'm talking about like, just really fans and, people that think they know and, whatever they call smarts and smarks or whatever the heck they're called. Bro, I sit here and I know how tough my road has been, and there's a lot of scars. And then, bro, every week I bring on my guest and I hear the stories of what every individual went through. Bro, I got to tell you, I don't care how over you are or how much money you make or how you headline WrestleMania, 15 WrestleManias. Bro, I don't know if there is anything more difficult. Bro, listen, I don't want cars and letters coming in. I know cops and firemen and people that put their lives on the lines every day. I understand people serving our country. I get that. But the psychological warfare, bro, of being a wrestler and all these peaks and valleys over a long period of time, man, you've got to be a special person to just be able to get through all that, never knowing where it's going, bro.
Yeah, I mean, you have no clue where it's going tomorrow. I mean, just as fast as you get something, it can be taken away. Just as over as you are today, you could be that forgot about tomorrow. So it's peaks and valleys, and there's strains, and there's mental games, and there's tests everywhere you go. It takes a person of great mental capacity to handle this,
But
and
D'Lo, let me ask you this, bro. Does it become an addiction at some point?
it is an addiction, I think, in a way, because you want to always get that feeling, that rush again. So walking through the curtains is an addiction. Being out in front of the people is something you can't get anywhere else, so that's an addiction. So maybe we're all gluttons for punishment. I don't know, but we keep going back at it, and hoping to get that one last ride.
Now, D'Lo, let's talk about that. And we're at the end of the road now. 2009 to 2013. You're at TNA. I was there with you a little bit during that time. I think I got out in 2010. I'm not sure, but I do know while we were working there together, you were an agent at the time. Obviously, D'Lo's got a great mind for the business. There's no question about that. It would seem a natural progression that D'Lo becomes an agent. But D'Lo, I always had the sense when we worked in that capacity, back in 2009 at TNA, I always had the sense, bro, that you weren't ready to be an agent yet. What was I wrong? Was your heart into it, or did you still want to compete in that ring?
A little bit of both. I mean, I had accepted my agent role, and I felt really good about helping younger talent develop, and almost like when you teach someone something, you see them go out there and do it in the ring, it's almost as good as you doing yourself. But then at the same time, when there are some people you go, wow, even out of shape and old, I can still go out there and turn it up and do a lot of things. There's that part of you going, man, I can still do it. But, my career track, I knew that you can only go so far. Your body can only last so long, but your mind, knock on wood, can keep going on. Forgot all those chair shots. But your mind can keep going on. And so I had accepted the role of being an agent and tried to just throw my all into being an agent.
Now, D'Lo, again, I don't know. I'm just asking the question because I don't know. And, and if you could tell me, cool. If you can't, you can't. But what was the end of the road, with TNA? I mean, why did you finally wind up leaving that organization?
To tell you the truth, and as God's my witness, I have no clue why it ended. I can tell you that I think it had to do something more with the company resizing or downsizing. I could give you 100 different reasons, but none of them which make sense, other than maybe I don't know.
Well, I had Tara on last week, D'Lo, and she was telling me one of the reasons she decided to leave at the end at TNA was the catering. Did that have anything to do with your decision?
Well, the Tuesday taco is pretty bad, I gotta tell you.
Bro, her and I were popping huge. She brought up Taco Tuesday last week. I almost threw up all over my desk, bro.
Yeah, people don't realize that we have to put up with a lot of stuff, and Taco Tuesday was one of them.
Now, D'Lo,
or seafood surprise where there's no seafood in it. Surprise.
Yeah. Now, now, D'Lo, when TNA comes to the end, in your mind, is this done with my ring career? Do I want to get on with something else? Where are you mentally at that point in time?
Mentally, I'm moving on. I do little things like conventions or a little spot show here or there. I moved out to Vegas to pursue another career, and I still stay in touch with the business. There's a company out here called Future Stars of Wrestling, FSW, and I help agent some of their stuff, and I run a class on Fridays out here. That's my way of staying in contact with the business. But other than that, I'm trying to segue into a whole nother career that I can do for the next 30 years.
Now, let me stop you right there, because you said a very interesting word there. You said, I'm trying to. Is that you're trying to get into something new, or there's still that part, the old Godfather where they're pulling Michael Corleone back in? Does some of that still exist, honestly?
That's always going to be there. It's just the nature of the business. The pull is always going to be there. But I'm doing my best to segue out. And like I said, I do enough where I stay in contact with the business just to get my fix, but not so I have to dive back into that life.
Good.
So, I'm segueing into something I can do for a longer period of time.
Okay, now 2 quick questions, D'Lo, and I'll wrap it up with you. First of all, please tell me you're down in Vegas. I know a certain somebody is down in Vegas. Please tell me you don't run into the world famous Glenn Gilbernetti out there.
I see Glenn a lot over at FSW, and yeah, he has not changed one bit, one iota in the entire time I've known him. He's the same guy he was, bouncing around in whether it be WCW or TNA. He's the same guy, and you just want to punch him in the face.
Now, D'Lo, I'm going to ask you one more favor, because I think, all the aggravation you gave me with the chest protector early on and stuff like that, I think you owe me. I'm not going to take a percentage of your paycheck like Ahmed gets, and, because you're only down to 25% of that, I'm going to let you keep your money. But if I do make the decision to bring Ahmed Johnson on the show, based on your past experience with him, will you come on the show just in case and be my interpreter? Will you commit to that, D'Lo?
I will commit to being your interpreter if you need it. Yes, I will do it. Right. I speak several languages, and yes, I can do that.
Okay. D'Lo, listen, I want you to know I get my biggest joy out of doing this show because I get to bring people like you on, and even if it's for an hour, I get to put you high up on this pedestal where I really believe you should be. I know, people look at, the wrestling business and it's so easy, to remember the top names. But what Vince Russo knows is if you don't have that backbone and if you don't have that foundation, the people will not stick along with the product long enough to see the top names. So you need that foundation, and everybody has such an important role to play, and everybody, is a star. And, that's why I wanted you to come on the show. I wanted to go through some of these things with you because, again, D'Lo, even when I look at them, it's phenomenal what you were able to accomplish on your talent and your talent alone. And I want to thank you for, giving me the joy and the honor and the privilege of working with you, throughout both our primes, because you were really one of those guys that I really respected and looked up to, based on hard work and dedication to the wrestling business.
Well, Vinny Wright, thank you for those kind words, and I will tell you the honor is all mine because I got the privilege and pleasure of working with guys like you and Jim Cornette and Jim Ross and everyone down the line, but particularly you. You helped me out in many, many ways, and people don't know this. And one of the last memories I have is I remember the night I won the European title, and I walked back to the back, and you looked at me and said, "You're a star." And that stuck with me till this day. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to show my talents to the world and be something people remember in the wrestling business.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate that. And listen, I'm gonna be pulling for the Bears tonight for you. You're the only reason I'm pulling for Bears. Now, who was the other guy? Edwards. Who's the other TNA guy?
Oh, Eddie, the camera guy. He's a big Edwards. Yeah, fuck, I can't think of his.
Yeah, I used to get pissed off when he used to talk about, the Bears, we, like he was on the team. Meanwhile, bro, the guy was $125 soaking wet. He wasn't on the team. D'Lo could be on the team. D'Lo looks like he should be on the team. I never had a problem with that. But D'Lo, listen, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. Good luck with your new career out there in Vegas. We're gonna come around again, bro, and I'm gonna have you on the show again because it's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. And I want you to say hello to those two little girls. Listen, the last time I saw your older daughter, it looked like she inherited all the hair that you lost. Does she still have that crazy thing going on?
She has all that hair, and it's long and curly, and she's got her mom head of hair, so she doesn't have my head hair. Thank goodness.
Thank God for that, right? Well, D'Lo, thanks a lot. And listen, more than anything else, good luck tonight. Go Bears.
Thank you, Vinny Rue. I love you, bro, and I appreciate it.